From the FOX6 studios, this is Ask Contact 6. This is the segment where we bring in experts to answer your questions. The topic we've chosen for today is student loans. Student loan debt in the U.S. totals about $1.8 trillion, with the average balance being around $40,000. So that's actually the second biggest form of consumer debt in the U.S. after mortgages. We received many submissions on this topic. Thank you to everyone who sent a question, and we have a lot to talk about today. Our expert here is Carol Trone from the Wisconsin Coalition on Student Debt. Carol, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Carol, can you start by telling us what the Wisconsin Coalition on Student Debt does?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So we are a statewide, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. Our members consist of a whole range of the stakeholders. So it would be banks, it's credit unions, it is colleges and universities, it's high schools, it's nonprofit organizations, and so we have about 20, a little over 20 organizational members. And we're coming together to say, I mean, our little tagline is basically clarity is confidence. And so we want to build the conversation to get through really what are some confusing aspects about student loan debt, to make sure that people in Wisconsin can, first of all, minimize whatever student loan debt that they take on by having good information, having good strategies, and then make sure that whatever student loan debt they take on is manageable.
So for those borrowers, is there a hotline they can call or a way they can contact you?
There is, yes. So we have stepped forward with help from Ascendium Education Group, has been a terrific partner and supporter of our work. So we have a confidential free resource. The helpline is 833 589 0750. It is staffed from Monday to Friday from 8 to 4:30. And when you call that number, you are going to be talking to a trained professional. This is going to be someone who's not your loan servicer, but is really going to help you understand and navigate the steps that you need to take in your particular loan situation. And so this is confidential, free. I call it sometimes myself just to test it out. There's no wait time.
So for anyone who's watching this and maybe we didn't get to your question today, they can always call the hotline and try to discuss their case in more detail.
There is, and we also do have an email option for that, and you can just email us at questions@debtsmarts.org. Or you can send in a question through our website, which is debtsmarts.org. It's with an S.
Okay, well, based on the volume of submissions we got, I'm sure there are a lot of people that could take advantage of that. So thank you. We are going to get to those questions in just a little bit. But first, we did have to paraphrase or edit a couple of questions for clarity. And also, Carol will do her best to answer your questions today based on the information we have. But for more advice on your specific case, you may want to call the Wisconsin Coalition on Student Debt directly. So let's get started. Reading our questions again today is our Contact 6 associate producer, Annette. Annette, what is our first question?
Yes, our first question comes from Wanda in Plymouth. She writes, what happens if you're not being billed for student loan payments and therefore are not making any payments? So the question, what happens if you're not billed for a student loan?
I'm sure she's excited to not get billed, but at the same time, it could be concerning, meaning maybe something has gone wrong. What would you advise Wanda to do?
Yeah. So first thing is to make sure that that she knows what her debt situation is, and the way that she can do that is to log into studentaid.gov. And you're going to hear me say that a lot with some of these responses. So if you're not seeing a bill and you're thinking you should be seeing a bill, you need to make sure that your loan servicer has your contact information. And there's a lot of ways that that could have gotten lost, because there have been some changes in who is servicing loans over the last several years. You could be in a forbearance. So it may not necessarily mean that you're late on payments that you're supposed to be making. So you could be in one of the programs that's for instance, the SAVE program, which has put you in a forbearance and no payments are needed if you're in that plan. But the best thing is you need to make sure that you keep on tabs, of who is your servicer, Do they know how to reach you, and do you know how to reach them?
Right. It's such a confusing landscape with so many of the changes that have been happening over the last few years, but that website should have the most accurate information.
Yeah. So what you're really going to be doing is two parts. So the first one is studentaid.gov. Think of that as your master switchboard of what is going on in terms of my student loans. And it's important to start there because for most people, if you're going into a 2 or a 4 year degree, that obviously is taking you more than 1 year. And so you very likely might have taken out more than one loan. So you need to know what all of those loans are because they may have different details, even different servicers, different terms. So you go to studentaid.gov first. You'll see there, again, those terms, including who's your servicer. And then it's your servicer that you talk to about the actual details of your payment plan.
Okay. I hope that was helpful to Wanda. What is our next question?
We received several questions about paying off loans amid financial difficulties. Here are two of them. The first one is from Tamika in Milwaukee. She writes, how can I get my payment down to a payment that is more feasible for my income? I feel as if the questions they ask during the repayment process are leaving me paying more than I can afford, which is also putting me behind in payments. The second question is from Barb in Milwaukee. She writes, how can I get a payment plan that is affordable when I have so many medical bills? So in summary, how can I make my payments more affordable?
We did get a number of questions on this topic. There was another person who wrote to us saying they had difficulty paying when they got cancer. So obviously life is unexpected. There are expenses that can come up that make paying your student loans challenging. Is there any option out there for these people?
Well, so the one starting point is so in the case of these borrowers, they're looking for the lowest possible payment, is what it sounds like, and so you can test out different scenarios with different priorities that you may have. So when you go to studentaid.gov, there actually is a very helpful loan. I think they call it a loan wizard tool. And it will allow you to plug in different priorities. And if you allow it to actually pull your information about your loans and then your income and your family size, it will give you different scenarios. And so it'll say, okay, so if your goal is lowest payment possible, and that can be one of your options, it will show you how to do that. So generally you want, in that case, an income-based repayment plan, and it'll give you some of the options and what those payment terms look like. For people who are facing even a significant financial barrier on their repayments, it's important for those borrowers to not give up. And so there are options for forbearance that you can go into. You should talk to your servicer and explain what those situations are, to try to work towards either you could get at least a temporary forbearance, or you could if your income isn't going to meet what your payments are, you need to work with the servicer. Too often what we're seeing is that, and it's understandable, I think, is that you see something that seems overwhelming and you just don't want to deal with it. And I think we've got some questions later on about that, but you don't want to do that. That's going to create such a cascade of challenges for yourself later on. I did want to point out that so in certain cases, with a federal loan, not private loan, and I'm assuming most of these borrowers are talking about federal loans, which is the majority of student loan debt. So there is an option. It's called Total and Permanent Disability, TPD. You can find out more of the details about how you might be able to qualify for a discharge under that TPD situation. But essentially, that is as it sounds. Like you have to be able to provide documentation either from your doctor or could be from Veteran Services or Social Security Administration that you have a significant health situation. So, and the website outlines pretty specifically how significant this needs to be. So I'm just going to, I looked at these notes, but something that might result in death, something that's going to continue for at least 60 months, or has already lasted for that long. So in the case of your caller who has cancer, that again, that might be something that she wants to pursue, talk to her loan servicer. And if that's the case, then she might have a path for that total and permanent disability discharge.
All right. Thank you, Tamika and Barb, for those questions. Who do we have next, Annette?
Jay Danger in Brown Deer writes, I was part of the ITT Technical Institute predatory lending scandal. My student loans, formerly financed by Sallie Mae, are now held by Mohila. Am I eligible for loan forgiveness? So the question, am I eligible for loan forgiveness for a predatory loan?
I'm very interested in your response to this question because every now and then we hear about another predatory lending scandal and you wonder what happens to the people who owe money in student loans. Do they still have to pay it?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's it's just it's kind of an awful situation all around. And so what has happened for these borrowers and in these predatory loan situations, they tended to be students who were attending for-profit colleges. And they, there's different ways that they've described what is happening here, but essentially low value degrees. And so they may either have the institution, the college may have promised that this was a pathway or a certification that in fact they weren't promising, or that they couldn't promise. Job placement rates maybe were overblown, completely fabricated. And so people at these kinds of, again, primarily for-profit colleges, they weren't completing their degrees. They're still stuck with the debt. And that I'll just say that. So for any of us going to any kind of college, when you take out the debt, like you have that debt, whether or not you complete that degree. So that's, something to think about up front. So there are cases, excuse me, with a federal loan where there can be that discharge because of a predatory loan or a college closure. There was more of a flurry of those kinds of cases before the pandemic. And if you go to the studentaid.gov website, you can read the situation. So there's a menu bar right on the homepage that talks about loan forgiveness, and it's one of those options. So what you can do, you can call our helpline and we can walk you through it. But so that kind of loan discharge, in this borrower's case, it depends. He may be eligible for that kind of discharge. It's going to really matter, what years he attended, and what institution he attended. And then there are very specific steps that they need to go through for that kind of recourse. So I guess the question, it's very specific to a person's situation, but yes, that is a category of forgiveness is with either institutions that were basically bad actors or colleges that have closed.
All right. So that sounds like the answer is possibly, but you have to look into it.
That's right.
All right. What do we have next?
The most common question we received was about loan forgiveness. Here are two of those questions. The first one is from Lavender in Milwaukee. Lavender writes, my daughter has student loans. How can we learn more about a forgiveness program? She really needs help. And Stavrofila writes, can I get loan forgiveness for a 30-year-old school loan? So in summary, how do you qualify for loan forgiveness?
So this was by far the topic we got the most questions about. I'm interested in how people find out if they qualify for loan forgiveness or if they could plan on, navigating their career in a way that they would be eligible.
Right. So I started out first of all, I guess, in a point of saying that. So if we think about these as loans, so basically for most loans, the expectation is that it's something that needs to be repaid. And so I want to just emphasize that with callers because we have heard about a lot of forgiveness options and plans, and they are available, but people shouldn't go into a loan expecting that forgiveness will happen. The ways that forgiveness can happen, so the one that's probably the most generous pathway is PSLF, so Public Service Loan Forgiveness, and that currently exists. That was passed into law, signed by President George Bush in 2007. So that's still on very strong footing, and essentially that program can apply to people who are working in all kinds of public service. So it's teachers, it can be firefighters, law enforcement, people who work in government. And the whole point was to, I guess, to encourage people to go into those professions, which typically are lower paying but high need by our society. But even in that case, so there's no cap on the amount that can be forgiven. But remember, you have to pay for 10 years. So so any kind of loan forgiveness is, in most cases, you should not think of it as it's going to be an automatic thing. And so you're going to see forgiveness options because of a profession that you go into. So there are also, similarly, because we have shortages of nurses, we have shortages of healthcare workers in rural areas. So there will be plans and incentives to encourage people to go into those programs. There's other kinds of teacher incentive programs. Again, if you go to teach in a high need area, that could be a high poverty area in a rural community or an urban community. So those are to your borrower's questions. That's something that she could do. Is she could say, well, I'm going to go into public service. It could also be working for a nonprofit. But then what she would do is she'd have to go into, she'd sign up for an income-driven repayment plan, and she would be making payments based on her income for those 120 payments. So it's not an automatic. I did want to call attention to your listeners to the employer student loan repayment benefits. And so this is something, so I know we're largely talking about what are the situations where your federal loan would be forgiven by the federal government, but there are somewhat newer opportunities that people should really look into. So a growing number of employers are taking advantage of what is basically a tax-free benefit where they can make payments on their employees' student loans, and that's tax-free for them. So initially this program was time limited and was through the CARES Act, and it was set to expire at the end of this year. And one really great thing that came out of the One Big Beautiful Bill is that they extended it. It's permanent. And so we're expecting actually a lot more employers are going to be offering this student loan repayment benefit. So for your listener, again, her daughter could look at public service professions if those are things that she's interested in and dedicated to doing, thinking she'll do them for the 10 years. Or she could find what is usually a private sector employer. You can sometimes it's advertised on their HR website. You can ask about it as an employee benefit. And I think an employer can provide up to $5,200 a year. So it's not insignificant.
There's no list out there of employers that offer this.
Well, we're trying to find it. What happened? Actually, it's one of our projects.
Okay, I was
at the
going to say that'd be so
coalition.
nice if you could just find a list.
Yes, yeah. There's, there are national, or there's the SHRM is a national association for health or human resource benefits.
Yeah.
And we think they're tracking that because it's a win-win for everyone to be able to offer that benefit. And so there are. We don't have a complete list. We know that there are employers in Wisconsin that offer it, and we're expecting, actually, because of this recent extension, this permanent extension of the benefit that happened in July, we think some employers were kind of waiting on the sidelines to see if this was going to be something that would stick around, and so we think actually there's going to be a lot more.
And then we had this question from Starofila, who asked about forgiveness for a 30-year school loan. I don't know if that means she's been paying for 30 years or not. Do you reach a point where they say, oh, well, you've been paying for a very long time?
Yeah. So, I mean, if she's paid for 30 years and she still has a debt, I would suggest, I mean, it's possible that at this point, whatever remaining balance can be forgiven. So that would be in an income-driven repayment plan. So what she needs to do is go to studentaid.gov, see what terms her loan is in. She needs to be in one of those IDR or income-based repayment plans for that to happen. And then most importantly, and I know there's a lot of questions related around the forgiveness, you have to ask for it. So there's multiple steps. You have to make sure you're in the plan that will work you towards eventual forgiveness. In plans that are not about public service, the payment term can be 20 or 25 years, and actually beginning next year, it's going to be even longer. So you're looking at paying for many years before you would hit the point where you might be eligible for the loan forgiveness of whatever is left.
All right. Thank you for all that detail. What is our next question?
Our next one is from Monica and Racine. Monica writes, how long does my student loan need to be in forbearance before it's forgiven? Also, how do I find out who has my loan? It's been moved to different lenders over the years. Now I have no idea where it is. So the question, how do I find out who has my loan?
Is this a question you hear from time to time?
Oh, all the time. People are, you sign that paperwork in the beginning when you start your program, and then life changes and you move around and so forth. So we're hearing this a lot. Again, starting point, go to studentaid.gov. You may not realize that your loans and the information live there, but they do. It's been a few years since I've been in school. I logged in. I'm like, oh, they're my student loans right there. So that's your dashboard. So go there. That's where she's going to find out what she has. And then it'll say the servicer. So again, making sure that there are clear channels of communication with the servicer. Now, I think part of her question was about forbearance.
Yes. She said, how long does it need to be in forbearance before it's forgiven?
Yeah, so that's not really going to be a scenario. So what is confusing here is that particularly for borrowers who were in the SAVE plan, they have all been put into forbearance. And then everyone during the pandemic was in forbearance because of the pandemic, because of the COVID Act. So, but that is no longer a situation. And there is not a plan where you just sit in forbearance until you get forgiveness. Now, it could be that your income, so if you're in an income-based repayment plan and your income is very low, your necessary payment might be zero, but that's not forbearance. So that's, so you need to have a payment count. Forbearance is basically, think of it as like everything is stalled.
Right. All right. What do we have from Sean?
Yes, Sean is from South Milwaukee. Sean writes, do I qualify for loan forgiveness? I'm employed as a law enforcement officer and have a $19,000 balance on my loan. So the question, does law enforcement qualify for loan forgiveness?
So would Sean qualify under the public service loan
Yes,
forgiveness you mentioned?
most likely yes. And so what anyone can do if they're wondering, hey, is my employer, because it's determined by your employer. So you go to that website, studentaid.gov. They have a really helpful employer lookup. And you need to, if you have their EIN, you plug that in there. It'll come right up if they're an eligible employer. Law enforcement is going to be probably a yes. So this borrower, though, I think said they have $19,000. So, do they qualify? Yes, it sounds like they would. You'd check that employer lookup tool. I guess the bigger question, though, is even in PSLF, you need to make 120 payments. And so
You can't miss one?
well, you can't miss one. No, but your payment, the payment amount. So it's not the payment amount; it's the counter, right? And so there could be times, again, if your income is low or your family size is big relative to your income, I'm working with a teacher right now where that's the case, where her payment is zero because of her income and because of her family size, but she is actively in repayment, and those will count, right? But not just forbearance, not paying. So for this law enforcement officer, the question for him would be, what's the amount of the payments he's going to be making? He needs to make 120 payments, and is there going to be something left over at the end? Because you can't shorten that time period. The whole point is to keep people in that public service. So he would need to be in that role he would need to be in a PSLF eligible role for 10 years, and then the remaining balance would be forgiven.
All right, Sean, we hope that works out for you. Annette, what do we have next?
This one's from Nancy in Salem. Nancy writes, in 2013, I took out a student loan to get a certificate in small business accounting from a local junior college in hopes of opening my own small business. It's been a dream all my life. In my 50s, I began suffering from arthritis, and it became more difficult to work, much less attempt to start a business. I've never returned to work full time. I am now 66 years old and collecting Social Security. Since loan repayments began, I have never had enough money to send a payment. I don't know the status of the loan. Is there loan forgiveness for seniors in my situation? So the question, is there loan forgiveness for senior citizens with financial hardship?
So what advice do you have for Nancy?
So unfortunately, as a category, no, there is not a category for older Americans with health issues. But like some of the other borrowers, what she can do is she should do is make sure that she is in an income-driven repayment program, because if her income is low, then her required payment will calibrate based on that income.
All right. I hope that works out for Nancy. I know she took out all this time. She took time. She got this degree, and then life dealt her a bad hand, it seems like.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you hear about that a lot.
Yeah.
All right. What do we have next?
This one's from Bertha in Milwaukee. She writes, how long am I able to make student loan payments before the worst happens? And how can I consolidate my student debt with my other debt? So the question, how long can I go without paying my student loans?
It's an interesting question. Do you hear that too?
Well, yeah. So, how long can you go without paying? So we want to make sure that the reason you're not paying is because you're avoiding a necessary payment. So, as I was saying before, it could be that you're in an income-based repayment program and your payment is zero.
Sure.
Now, I'm not sure from this borrower if that is her situation. And for her and for other borrowers, you shouldn't assume that you're not making a payment because your income is so low that you won't need to. So you need to make sure, again, you go to studentaid.gov, you see who your servicer is, and then you call your servicer to understand what your payment, basically what the lowest payment is that you can make based on your income. If you don't pay and you're not, you are missing required payments, this enforcement of non-payment is in full swing now. So essentially, you'll be considered like with other debt that you take on as a consumer. So after 90 days, you'll be considered delinquent. That'll start to affect your credit ratings. That affects then your ability to, for credit cards and other kinds of loans you may want to take out. And then you're considered fully delinquent after 270 days. Don't let it get to that point, because because it's a federal loan. If you do go delinquent, then that can take your tax refund that you may get. It can take other public benefits. It'll prevent you from actually being able to go back to school if that's something you want to do, and take out a loan to do that.
Okay, and can you consolidate student debt with other debt?
You can. So I think the borrower said that she had a large federal loan and then a smaller one. And the thing to be careful of, so people do consolidate, or people do take their federal loans and refinance them into private loans. That's a personal decision. When you do that, though, it's a one-way street. And when you do that, you leave the federal loan program and you leave those protections and the flexibilities that the federal loan program gives you. So if you're like, you know what, I just want to get the lowest rate, I just want to, clean up my portfolio and just have one payment, okay. But that borrower should be aware that then she is permanently cutting herself off from these income-driven repayment options, potential, forbearance or forgiveness.
Right, some additional risk there.
Yeah.
Okay. Annette, who do we have next?
Pamela in Cudahy. She would like to know, does student loan debt die with the borrower?
It does. Hopefully that I don't know the context for that
Right.
question. Yeah, but federal loan, it does. So so in the case of if a parent has taken out a Parent Plus loan on behalf of their student, they are the holder of the loan. If they die, then yes, the loan is canceled. If the student and the debt is held in the student's name, if that student passes away, then yes, that loan also goes away. I just hope that let's make sure that you're thinking of other options, certainly than like, oh, I'm just gonna keep this out there until I die, because there's a lot of living that we need to do.
Right. So, but the bottom line, if this person passes away and it's their own student debt, it wouldn't go to their children
Correct.
or anybody else.
Federal loan, yes,
Federal loan.
loan. Now, if they have private loans, again, they may have particular terms in most cases, and in most states, those loans, federal, private, would be canceled.
All right, got it. What do we have next, Annette?
Dana in Milwaukee. And Dana would like to know, I was told I had student loan forgiveness and it appeared that way for a couple of years. Now they've taken my homestead and tax refund. What do I do? So the question, why was my tax refund taken for a forgiven loan?
So you touched on this a little bit already. It sounds like this has gotten to that point where the taxes are impacted. Is that the reason it was taken?
Yeah, and my heart just sunk when I saw this question, because this borrower clearly thought she was in the clear. I'm not sure where she got the information that her loan was forgiven. But if her refund and the homestead credit's being taken, then yes, that is the action the government takes if you have defaulted on your loan. So probably what happened is that she may have had one or more loans that she wasn't aware of. And that we do hear that from borrowers. And so it may be either that the forgiveness actually didn't happen on the loan she thought it happened on. And so in that case, of course, follow up, look at your studentaid.gov account, follow up with your servicer. You need to ask for forgiveness. Forgiveness is typically not just granted. You need to trigger it and request it, and so that there's that documentation, that paper trail. So in her case, I'm guessing it means that that she has one or more loans that she has not been paying on. They have fallen into delinquency, and so now the federal government is doing what they can do, which is, garnish wages and refunds and so forth.
If she feels strongly that a mistake has been made, she just needs to talk to her servicer and go to the studentaid.gov website. Or if she feels real strongly they made a mistake, this is forgiven.
Yeah, I mean, so she'll have to see what that record shows, and so she'll, and unfortunately, we know that there's been lots of conflicting messages and communication, but it really is on the borrower to document what they've paid. And in some cases, this is what borrowers have to do. They have to say, "Here's all the payments I made. Here's the documentation of like the loan forgiveness notice." And then she can pursue it with consumer protection or ombudsman and so forth.
Okay, but if a mistake was not made and she had a loan out there, she's just going to have to pay that off in her federal taxes?
And she's gonna, and most immediately, whatever's happening, and if she's not aware of it, like, she needs to figure out what is triggering that action, because the worst case is someone not knowing that they have a loan, because they might have several and they didn't know about this one loan or weren't paying attention to it, and that one just keeps doubling and increasing, and the interest capitalizing and so forth.
All right. Annette, what do we have from Philip, I believe?
Yep, Philip's from Mount Pleasant. He writes, I've been a Wisconsin resident and homeowner for 4 years. Before that, I lived in Illinois. The Illinois Student Assistance Commission was servicing my loans. After COVID, they sent my loans to the feds. I went from maybe $35,000 owed to $92,000 the day the loans transferred. No one I've spoken to can explain it. The commission states that they have no record and they gave everything to the feds. The loans servicer hasn't been helpful. How is this possible or fair? I have paid the cost of my education twice over. All that's left is tens of thousands of dollars of interest. Can you help? So the question, why did my loans balloon upon transfer?
That sounds like a really upsetting situation for Philip. Any idea what might have happened?
Yeah. So first of all, yeah, I'm sad for Philip, and unfortunately, he's not alone in having something like that happen. So, it's impossible to know without knowing more details about his particular situation. But transferring the loan itself should not have caused that balloon. So, if he consolidated, sometimes that resets the interest. This idea of, or this concept of capitalized interest and ballooning interest, has been a real problem for many borrowers. And it actually is something, so not maybe helping Philip, but it is actually something that the One Big Beautiful Bill is going to address, in terms of people not getting underwater, where they end up owing more than they originally borrowed, even though they've been paying for years. So my suggestion for Philip is, so it sounds like he has been looking at his studentaid.gov account. He should look at his documentation. My suggestion is that, because he mentioned that he was an Illinois resident, and it sounds like maybe this is where the loans and the issues originated. So different states do have different services and protections, and in Illinois, they do have, through their attorney general, they do have a student loan helpline. It's kind of an ombudsman, and in Philip's case, that's exactly what they are there to do. So I do have a phone number for it. I don't know if you want me to share it. Okay. So their student home loan helpline. Now, this is Illinois. This is not us. And this is their state office. So it's 1-800-455-2456. And so this is probably going to be a sticky, complicated situation to piece what happened. But the reason it ballooned was probably because of something that happened in the consolidation and interest capitalizing upon interest.
All right. Thank you for that question, Philip, and good luck. What is our next question, Annette?
This one comes from Melanie in Colgate. Melanie writes, I have a master's degree in a hefty student loan. I've been on an income-based payment for an income-based payment plan for more than 10 years. There is nowhere on my student loan website nor on the federal government site that actually tells me when I'm done, nor does the loan amount go down with all the payments I'm making. It feels like I'm paying and there is no end. I've heard there's a calculator on the FAFSA site, but it has never been available to me. I always get vague responses when I call, and it seems the rules keep changing. Is it legal to have a loan and not be able to clearly see when you are done? So the question, why is there no end date for my loan?
This is a real curious one. Any idea what might be happening?
Right. So there should be a loan end date. And one thing that complicates the answer to this is, so if we think of like a mortgage that we take out, or, we have a fixed term, right? And you can have a fixed term, know when the loan ends with a student loan, and that is the standard repayment. However, if you are going into different loan programs, trying to get forgiveness, that's where that count can be complicated. It can be extended, and you can change. You can change from a shorter term student loan to a longer term. One thing that has happened on the student loan or the studentaid.gov website is some things have been moved around. And with loans moving to different servicers, different things happening with different plans because of court actions and other things. Some borrowers are, pointing out that they're not finding the information like a payment counter that should be available. So there is, I don't know how I could get, there is a website, web page on their site that can walk her through the steps of how she can find that payment counter. But short answer is she should know. Borrowers should know what their payment count is. For some people, it's gotten, maybe temporarily moved or taken offline because they're recalibrating things through the payment pause that happened during the pandemic and so forth. But for this borrower, if she wants that particular web page, which is too long to give out, I think, over the air, but I would encourage her to either email our questions at debtsmarts.org line. It's probably the best way, because then I can give it to her in an email.
Okay, that sounds good. What do we have next?
This one comes from Jennifer in Hubertus. Jennifer writes, I looked at my credit report and it stated that I had a loan for $17,000. I know I didn't have that much and it's from over 10 years ago. How do I rectify this or ask for a reduction? So the question, how do I address a loan on my credit report?
Could this be a private or a federal loan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, if it's a private loan, it would not appear on studentaid.gov, and it would only be on the credit report. So some initial thoughts on this. If what she's saying is, I took a loan out, but this seems much higher than what I remembered it being, that could be a case, again, where this interest is ballooning. So she needs to look at that credit report, see who holds that loan, and figure out what's happening. I don't know whether she's actually been making payments on that loan. The other thing, I guess, to make sure of, and this is still not an entirely common occurrence, but she should make sure. I mean, what she's not saying is what loan she took out. And so there are cases of identity theft that are happening out there. And unfortunately, we have dealt with some borrowers that say, there's this loan and I never went to this college. I never, what is this? So be vigilant about that and make sure that, okay, so the issue is, did you take out a loan? So that's a legitimate loan. It is your loan and this is not fraud. And then secondly, figuring out why that interest or why the balance has increased. And just like with our credit card debt, right? If you don't, you can pay a minimum amount, but with the interest rates, your balance is going to grow. So it's the same thing with a student loan. So if she was paying a very minimal amount, it may not have been taking the balance down when you factor in the interest accumulation.
All right, Jennifer, thank you for that question. What is our next question, Annette?
Yes, this is from Vicky in Sheboygan. She writes, I have two loans. One is a super large federal loan and the other is a smaller private loan, which I've refinanced with another lender. Is it best to keep that federal loan alone or to refinance with a private lender? Should I consolidate the two loans? So the question, when should I consolidate my loans?
I know we talked about this a little bit, but I bet it's a
Yeah.
question a lot of people have at some point about consolidation. So when should someone do that?
So again, it depends on what their primary objectives are. So for getting into some income-driven repayment plans, or or income-based repayment plans, you have to consolidate your loans so that they're all in eligible loan programs. Be aware though that when you consolidate, and this is where the details are that you want to talk through with your servicer, but that may reset the clock on your payment count. If you do that, it may be considered now like a new loan, with then the starting point being when that consolidation happens. And for some borrowers, maybe it's not advisable to consolidate. So again, the answer is in the details of your particular situation. If your objectives are to consolidate, just to simplify your whole financial situation, again, be advised that if you pull a federal loan out of that status into a private loan, you lose all those flexibilities that we've talked about earlier. But for some people, I'll just share. I mean, my kids had federal loans, and we said, you know what, we're just going to pay them off quickly, as quickly as we can. And we were able to get a better interest rate. And so we did. We actually did pull them out. They pulled them out of federal loans and put them into private. But when we did that, we knew, we were like, we are committed to paying them. And so it was a loan, set terms, set payment. That's what so we had made that decision. It was a personal decision. And so for borrowers, they need to understand that. But remember, it is a one-way street if they pull their loans out of a federal program.
All right. Is this our last question we've chosen for today?
It is. It's from Alexis in Milwaukee. Is there a way to pay the principal on my student loan rather than having my monthly payment go to interest only? The question, can I just pay my loan principal to avoid interest?
I'm sure a lot of people would love to avoid the interest on these
Yes.
payments. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, so first of all, it's in law that with federal loans and really the way most loans work is you pay the interest first and then the principal. So, she, again, because of some of these changes that we're going to see take effect next year, hopefully she's in a situation where if she is making the required payment and maybe that payment is very low, her overall loan balance won't continue to grow, which happened to a lot of borrowers. But no, she can't. I mean, basically, one thing maybe she could try to do is whatever that interest payment is, and then if she wants to make sure she's chipping away at that principal, maybe if she can do just $25 extra a month on that principal. There is also, another benefit of a federal loan is there's no penalty for prepayment. So if it's really important to her to just knock that balance down as much as she can, there's the required interest payment, but then if she can put a lot more towards the principal, then that shortens her loan in the long term.
All right, that's good to know. Thank you so much for all your detailed answers to these questions today. That is actually all the time we have for today. If you would like to submit a question for a future Ask Contact 6 segment or suggest a topic, you can go to fox6now.com and click on the blue Ask Contact 6 button. Thanks again to everyone who submitted a question. We hope these responses were helpful. Thanks also to my colleagues who make this segment possible, including executive producer Sarah Smith, editor Dave Machuda, who is also on the video switcher, chief photographer Cale Zimney, and Craig Sween in graphics. I'm Jenna Sachs. Thanks for joining us.